and welcome to Beyond Focus TV. My name is Angie Daniel and I am the hostess of the show. On tonight's show we have with us Miss Pat Lissade. She is a life coach. She is owner of PLC Services. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'll introduce her to you. We'll be right back.
Beyond Focus TV presents
its third annual ceremony on Saturday, June 16 at the prestigious Crystal Manor,
1460 Flatbush Avenue.
Et oui, le samedi 16 juin 2013, venez célébrer tous les papas. Venez manifester votre amour à votre père, mari, frère, cousin ou ami, pourquoi pas.
Who will be Father of the Year?
You must be there to know. La soirée sera animée par la diva Martine Marseille. Come and bask into the artistry of Monvelino Alexis. DJ Duvet sera aussi de la partie pour vous assurer une soirée à nul autre pareil.
Hollywood style.
Lot of surprises, honorees, un grand gala pour honorer tous les pères. Valet parking will be available.
Maîtresse de cérémonie, Angie Daniel, Marie-Carmel Bastien.
Info 917-873-3996 or www.beyondfocustv.com. Papi chéri?
Oui, ma fifi.
I love you.
I love you.
Oh.
I love you. 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 Welcome back to Beyond Focus TV. We are here having a conversation with Miss Pat Lissade. She is a life coach and a psychotherapist. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's my pleasure because I kind of wanted for us to have an overview of first, what is a psychotherapist, and second, what is a life coach. But before we talk about that, usually I'll introduce you to the community, so I'll let you do that.
Okay.
Who you are, what you do within the community. We'll talk about that a little bit, but
Okay.
Go ahead.
My name is Pat Lissade. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. That's my credential. And I am licensed to provide mental health services to people in the community.
Okay. So earlier on, I mentioned about the life coaching. When people hear about life coaching, is it the same way you would think of a soccer coach? Is it like somebody that's guiding you?
Absolutely. That's an excellent way to put it. So why would a person come to see a life coach? So let's say, for example, you've been on your job for 7 years. You feel that you're stagnant and that you'd like to make some changes professionally. You can see a life coach that will help you to guide you and make some decisions in terms of the next step in your career, whether that be going back to school, getting more knowledge in what you do, perhaps opening a business, whatever direction that you'd like to take in your career, that would be one area where a life coach would be helpful. On a more personal level, let's say you have a string of failed relationships. This is your 7th relationship. You perhaps want to get married and you notice that you're dating the same type of person and it always ends badly. A life coach will come in and do an assessment of what are the things that are happening in your relationships and help you and give you coping skills and guidance in terms of turning that situation around for a more positive result. Absolutely.
I'm thinking wow.
Absolutely.
So I, in my opinion, and it's really so good that, it's great when I have conversation with people that I would say, I'll rephrase that. I think in my mind, I kind of represent the community because as they're learning about what certain situations are, I'm learning it just as well.
Okay.
So I thought a life coach was just somebody who helped you with businesses, really not
Not at all. Not in the segment of life coaching where I specialize. So I'm dealing with people and relationships.
Okay.
I may even life coach a couple that they come in and
I was going to ask you about that.
Right. They come in and they say, Pat, we've been married 25 years. We love each other. We have 2 children together, but the spice in our relationship is gone. So because the treatment is individualized, I will do an assessment with the couple, and we might find that maybe they're not as spontaneous sexually as they used to be. And I will give them some ideas on how to spice things up. So depending on what your issue or problem is, I individualize a treatment for that.
I have 2 questions, exactly what you just said to me before. So what is the difference between a life coach and a marriage counselor? Are you part in both, or?
Well, it depends on the client, because some people don't necessarily want therapy. They prefer to have life coaching, where in life coaching, I'm not going to ask you about your mother and your childhood. It's not so psychoanalytical. It's more dealing with the here and now. What are the issues now, and what do we need to do to remedy them? If you're getting therapy, we have to go back to your childhood.
So a marriage counselor will go back to your childhood, is that what you're saying?
No, not really. What they will go back to is, how did your parents relate to one another? Because we want to determine the pattern of relating in a couple relationship. Where did you learn that from? So we may go back there, but not to the extent that you would if you would, for example, be doing psychotherapy, where we will go way back into your childhood.
So a basic question is, what is a psychotherapist, and what do you do with that?
A psychotherapist is someone who helps a person who's having some type of mental distress, and you provide coping skills, you provide treatment. Sometimes you have to provide medication to remedy whatever that mental distress is. Also, you provide talk therapy. A lot of problems can be remedied just by having someone to talk to and relieve yourself of whatever stress. Just by talking, that can bring a curative factor to a situation. So that's what a psychotherapist, we do a lot of talking about problems.
Okay, no, because I understand the basic need of it, because when people hear psychotherapist, see, because in my mind, I'm hearing life coach and psychotherapist. To me, they're two total different things, right? Are they?
2 separate areas.
Okay, so can you make the difference for me before I get to my next question?
Sure. The life coach would be someone that you come to, let's say, for 1 month.
Okay.
And you say, this is the problem. I want to move ahead in my job. I'm feeling stagnant. Can we talk about some solutions? So it's a quicker remedy. Now, if you're coming for psychotherapy, that's going to be longer, because we're going to talk about family issues. We're going to talk about behavior patterns. We're going to talk about the different relationships you've had. So psychotherapy is more intensive and also more long-term.
Okay, instead of the life coach.
Yes.
How do you, I'll rephrase that, when is it necessary for someone to see a psychotherapist?
I would say in the news recently, just I think yesterday, Rick Warren, who wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, he reported that his son committed suicide. If you have someone in your life who is depressed, if you have someone where you've noticed that there's a drastic behavior change, if you've noticed that they're not eating well, if they're not sleeping well, if they're not interested in activities that they used to be interested in, if they're telling you they're sad, there needs to be intervention, because a lot of times what happens, people are suffering from clinical depression and nothing is done to intervene. And if that goes untreated, that person can begin to have what we call suicide ideation, where they start thinking about suicide because the feelings of hopelessness are so overwhelming, they feel like dying is the only alternative. So if you observe certain symptoms, such as the ones that I've stated in a loved one, it's important to get them to an ER, get them to a therapist, get them to someone who can provide them some help.
You mentioned clinical, the aspect of clinical intervention. What is the difference between a clinical intervention and just having somebody to speak that you want to speak to? Don't answer that as of yet, because we have to take a break. And for me, the importance of it is so grand that I don't want to cut you off while you explaining it to us. I want to take a break first, and then when we come back, we'll continue that conversation. Okay. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Miss Pat Lissade.
Beyond Focus TV presents
its third annual ceremony on Saturday, June 16 at the prestigious Crystal Manor.
1460 Flatbush Avenue.
Et oui, le samedi 16 juin 2013, venez célébrer tous les papas. Venez manifester votre amour à votre père, mari, frère, cousin ou ami, pourquoi pas.
Who will be Father of the Year?
You must be there to know. La soirée sera animée par la diva Martine Marseille. Come and bask into the artistry of Monvelino Alexis. DJ Duvet sera aussi de la partie pour vous assurer une soirée à nul autre pareil.
Hollywood style.
Lot of surprises, honorees, un grand gala pour honorer tous les pères. Valet parking will be available.
Maîtresse de cérémonie, Angie Daniel, Marie-Carmel Bastien.
Info 917-873-3996 or www.beyondfocustv.com. Papi chéri?
Oui, ma fifi.
I love you. 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 I love you.
Welcome back to Beyond Focus TV. If you're just turning on to our show, we are here with Miss Pat Lissade. She is a life coach and also a psychotherapist. She is owner of PLC Services, right?
That is correct.
So earlier we were talking about the difference between clinical analysis, right? And when people need medication and when people need to speak to someone. When is that possible? When do you make the difference, understanding that aspect?
We make the distinction in the field if someone is severely mentally ill. So for example, if a person is having delusions, if a person is having auditory hallucinations where they're hearing something outside of themselves that no one else hears, if they're seeing dead people, if they're seeing their mother who, died 15 years ago and believes that to be true, there has to be a thorough assessment of that individual. Sometimes that person will be admitted for a 72-hour hold, and it will be determined if they need medication. Now, if someone comes into my office, for example, because they're not getting along with their spouse, that is not something that you need medication for. So that would require talk therapy.
Okay. So talk therapy, it would be if somebody's having palpitation because they're overwhelmed by whatever the situation is, right?
Absolutely. In a case of anxiety, they are starting a new job, they just got divorced, they just broke up, they just lost, millions of dollars, which many people have been dealing with the loss of a home, and they're feeling anxious all the time. So they would come into my office, and that's when we would talk about what are the stressors, what are the things that are causing them to have this escalated sense of anxiety.
So you would be like the person that distressed the stresses.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way of putting it.
Because I'm thinking like, a lot of the time, I'm from Haiti, so there are two different aspects of the idea of psychotherapists for us, right? I think we kind of mentioned it. Explain to me your aspect of a community like ours. How do you deal with them when it comes to psychotherapy or mental illness, first of all?
Well, the first thing that we have to do as a community is we have to take away the stigma that's associated with mental illness. There are different levels of mental illness and mental distress, as I like to say. So not everybody is crazy because they see a therapist. Sometimes in life, there are challenges that we face that are too heavy for us to carry. And a therapist is someone who will come alongside you and help you carry that burden. Unfortunately, in our community, we've made it this taboo, this weakness, and it comes because Caribbean people historically are very resilient and very strong, and we've kind of taken that on to say, well, I can handle it, I can deal with anything, and even though that's true, there are some things that impact your mental capacity and impact your feelings and impact your ability to function. So when you, for example, lose a child and you are overcome with grief, it doesn't mean that you're not strong. It means that that trauma has been so significant that you're having trouble getting back into the swing of things. And we can't look at that as a weakness. That's human. It is human to suffer loss and not be able to jump back up and act like nothing happened. So my goal is to reach out to the community and say, look, if there's some type of mental distress, seek out help, because it is better to deal with it than to let it fester, and then there's something worse that comes out of that, which is then you have people who become clinically depressed. They can't go to work, they can't function, or they're thinking about suicide, they try to commit suicide, or God forbid, someone who is actively psychotic who hurts someone else because everybody in the family is like, oh no, there's nothing wrong with this person. No, but if they're seeing things, they're not operating and dealing with life well, maybe there needs to be an intervention.
Okay, you mentioned so many things, and I didn't want to cut you off while you were talking about it. I know in my community, there's different aspects. Like we have the whole church belief, spirit belief. How do you talk to someone who, say, for example, if they're hearing voices, right? And they're hearing voices, everybody, we don't know what crazy is, because, I mean, if it was for that, 3/4 of people I know would have been categorized as crazy, but understanding culturally the whole spiritual point of view, right? And then seeing that from a psychological point of view, how do you deal with that?
Very good question, and I'm so glad you asked. One of the things I do in my assessment is I interview the person and ask, what are their religious beliefs? Because religion, even in psychology, we understand that that is a strength. It is a wonderful thing when a person has a spiritual belief. But then it's taking it further and understanding the culture of the church or the place of worship that the person comes from. Because it is not uncommon in churches for people to say, well, God told me. Now, if you don't understand that that has to do with church culture, you might pathologize that. And I often say to students, I teach at Hunter College, and I say to students, you can't pathologize everything. Sometimes it's culturally based, and you need to understand that culture. If somebody says to me in the context of being at Mass or being in church, God speaks to me, or I feel that God is saying something to me, that is not a psychological issue. But if someone says to me, and I had a patient say to me, the president has given me your paycheck and has told me to deliver it, then I need to take a look at, is this person operating in reality? Because I don't think President Obama gave her the checks. So the key is what the person's saying based in reality. And then we also look at functioning. This person who says to me, President Obama is the person who gave me the paychecks, are they able to function with their family members? Are they able to function in a work environment? Are they able to determine reality from falsehood? And a lot of times what you find, it's the same. The person cannot distinguish between the two worlds.
Okay. I have another part of question to that. I'll ask you the question first, and then we'll take a break. When we come back, you can answer.
Okay.
What are the responsibilities of family members towards mentally ill or mentally stressed out person as a family member? What's your responsibility towards this person? We're going to take a short break. When we come back, you'll answer that question for me, please. We'll be right back.
Beyond Focus TV presents
its third annual ceremony on Saturday, June 16 at the prestigious Crystal Manor.
1460 Flatbush Avenue.
A we le samedi 16 juin 2013. Venez célébrer tous les papas. Venez manifester votre amour à votre père, mari, frère, cousin ou ami, pourquoi pas.
Who will be Father of the Year?
You must be there to know. La soirée sera animée par la diva Martine Marseille. Come and bask into the artistry of Monvelino Alexis. DJ Duvet sera aussi de la partie pour vous assurer une soirée à nul autre pareil.
Hollywood style.
Lot of surprises, honorees, un grand gala pour honorer tous les pères. Valet parking will be available.
Maîtresse de cérémonie, Angie Daniel, Marie-Carmel Bastien.
Info 917-873-3996 or www.beyondfocustv.com. Papi chéri,
Oui, ma fifi.
I love you. 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 I love you.
Welcome back to Beyond Focus TV. We are having a conversation with Miss Pat Lissade. Before we took the break, we were talking about like having family members that have, whether it's depression or it's real mental illnesses. Because I think I will speak for myself. I would say, as probably part of my community, is that we kind of like pretend, we brush things aside. What are our responsibility towards a family member who's having a mental, situation?
That is a brilliant question, and I'm glad that you asked. The responsibility is to first talk to the person, get a sense from them what is going on with them. 9 out of 10 times, people, when asked, will tell you, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm feeling like I can't continue, or people will say, I feel very tired. I feel, and it's
so would those be keywords?
Those would be keywords. And then we want to look at functioning. Is the person going to school as normally? Are they going to work, or are they missing work? Are they putting off family functions? If this is someone who's usually jovial and very engaged and always at every function, and you notice, oh, wow, it's been 2 or 3 functions, I haven't seen the person. You reach out to them, they don't sound the way they normally sound. And if you see this for more than 2 weeks, if you see a consistent behavior change for 2 weeks or more, it's time to either take them to the ER, have them be assessed, and if there is a concern, they will do what we call a 72-hour hold. They will hold the person, they will assess them, they will take information, and they will see, is this person a danger to others or themselves, and do they need to stay in the hospital, or do they need to just go to an outpatient clinic once a week to talk to a therapist?
So, I think while you're speaking to me, and I'm hearing, like, I have so many people coming into my life, they need a little help. But is depression, could depression be an ongoing situation? Because I know people who have a certain pattern, right? Not necessarily that they're not functioning. Is there such a thing as a functioning depressed person?
There is. We call them melancholy people. They're just not very peppy. They tend to be impacted more strongly than other people. And that's why it's very important that a therapist get the initial intake and assessment needs to be complete. So what does that look like? You come in and they will ask you about your history, they will ask you about your family, they will ask you about how you interact with people, because we're trying to get a full picture of what is normal for you. So if you are someone who tends to stay by yourself, you prefer not to be around people, that's your norm. That doesn't mean you're crazy or you're depressed. That's just your personality. But if that person all of a sudden starts hanging out with people, starts spending money, starts going to all the parties, we have to take a look at that, because that's away from their norm. And what is going on that has caused this change of behavior?
Okay. So it always has to have a cause and effect.
Right. And we have to have a baseline. We have to know what is normal for this person. And some people are just melancholy, and you have babies and their mother will say, yes, she was always moody, she was always sad. So that's her norm. That doesn't mean that she's depressed. That's just her personality.
Okay. I was talking about, like, from the whole community point of view, the aspect of understanding what the difference of a life coach is and a psychotherapist, how would how can we get the community to understand that you can go to a psychotherapist and speak to anybody without thinking that, oh my God, it's the end of your world, or be felt ashamed for doing that?
Well, I first want to say other communities have gotten this message. They go to the therapist to put the problem at the therapist's door and to leave it there. And we in the Caribbean community have continued to feel like we need to hold on to all our problems and we need to solve them. So there's no shame. First of all, I think historically, Caribbean people have had to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and we continue to have that way of thinking. But the way I like to think of it, and one of my clients said it best, she said, I come to see a therapist so that I don't have to burden my family or friends, and I have someone who will listen to me and help me, and I don't have to worry about how she feels. So it's a place for you to get that time to be heard, to be supported, and to get what you need. Because oftentimes in the community, mothers, fathers, we're giving to other people, we're working, we're helping our parents, we're doing all these things, but there's no place for us to just sit and say, you know what, I'm just having a really hard time managing all of this. And that's what a therapist is. And the good thing about it is it's confidential. Whatever you say in that room stays in that room. So if you hate your mother-in-law, you can tell your therapist that. Do you want to tell your husband that? Maybe not. But the therapist is the place where all secrets are spoken.
Okay. You know, we mentioned like what the community would need, but there's also this idea of our community not being financially stable for a whole lot of things. For example, certain coverage, insurance coverage, will cover 3 to 6 sessions. Then it goes into your own pocket.
Absolutely.
So if anyone is not able to afford a therapist, is there any place for them to go that's free or?
Absolutely. Every community has what they call an outpatient clinic. And basically what they do is they will have staff there who are clinically trained to offer therapy. There is no reason in this country for you to not go to therapy. And if you're looking for someone, you simply look at, you do a Google search, for example, and you look for a therapist in my community, therapist in Brooklyn, therapist in Manhattan, and a whole list will come up. Psychology Today is excellent. You go on Psychology Today, you put in your zip code.
Psychology Today.
Psychologytoday.com, and it'll show you all the therapists in your area. There's no reason to go without help.
Well, ma'am, thank you for those words, and thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. I think we really need to have those type of conversations and let people know not only what's available to them and what not to be ashamed of.
Not to be ashamed.
You know, things happen. We are human. It is going to happen. Life's going to change. We just need to be able to function within it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for stopping by. This is the end of our show. I hope that you had a great time watching us, and hopefully you'll be able to get in touch with Ms. Lissade. I will see you next Tuesday, same place, same time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.